In a time where remakes, remasters, and reimaginations are being pumped up by video game corporations to take advantage of our pure and sweet nostalgia, there was one game that I had hoped for a certain company to remake or remaster in some way, shape, or form. But then Neo: The World Ends With You got announced, so I waited for that instead. After playing and putting around 80 hours into Neo: The World Ends With You, I am still a bit dumbfounded in the sheer amount of content that they were able to put into this game. It's a very chunky piece of software that just manages to deliver an experience that is accessible all the while retaining its complexities, making it distinctive from other games belonging within its genre. Its implementation of various gameplay mechanics seem reminiscent of the games that inspired it, but because of how well and exceptional the execution of these mechanics were, they amalgamate into one of the more enjoyable experiences you can receive in a JRPG of this caliber. That's not to say that this game is without its faults. This is not a perfect game. The thing is, having played the original on the DS and on the Switch, I understand the hype behind the sequel and why a lot of people, including myself, are hoping for it to be good. The game became a time capsule for fans and began to associate their experiences in playing the game to a specific time in their lives. From the exceptional soundtrack to the well-written story, like any other great game, it captured the hearts of many. However, despite gaining a strong cult following, it did not sell well. Back in 2007, the original game was released for the Nintendo DS, and despite receiving critical acclaim, it did not sell as well as its older cousins, particularly Final Fantasy X and Kingdom Hearts, only selling around a decent amount during the first half of the year it was released. To put it into perspective, the first Kingdom Hearts game already sold millions of copies within its first year, while the same can be said to Final Fantasy X as well. Safe to say it was a risk to even develop a sequel, but due to the clamor the fans had in having one, it remained a project of interest later down the line. At the time, the team that worked on the original game was too focused in developing games featuring a duck, a dog, and a Sora. Like seriously, a lot of games. This eventually led to Square Enix collaborating with another video game developer, and over the years they were able to port the original game to mobile devices and eventually on the Switch. It had taken Square Enix 14 whole years to release and deliver a sequel. Now that it's available, let's discuss why you should give this game a chance and perhaps may even end up in one of your top 10 this year. For a game like Neo, it is difficult to get into specifics without spoiling some aspects that are integral to the story. With that said, there might be minor spoilers in this review, but nothing remotely significant as to reveal any crucial details about the plot. I won't be specifying certain story beats and instead describe the general gist when it comes to the narrative. With that intro block out of the way, without further ado, allow me to present my review of Neo: The World Ends With You.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before, but that you're gonna love hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing.
We'll be right back after this.
With the inevitable transition to more modern consoles, Square Enix used this opportunity to enhance several aspects of its presentation and basically made the game prettier for all us gamer boys and gamer girls out there. Meanwhile, I was like, oh my god! Wow! Not only that, this allowed them to portray the game's world in the fresh, creative, and modern perspective that allowed players to bask in the world's distinct design and gave a sense of tourism with its dense and intricately detailed environments. The game is set in a fictional rendition of the Shibuya Ward in Tokyo, Japan. Shibuya is quite known for being the fashion capital of Tokyo, with its many shopping districts dedicated to retail and its abundance of culinary experiences as well. From the busy streets of the crossing to the famous Hachiko statue, the developers made a tremendous effort in trying to replicate the ward's real-life counterpart. The design choice they went for is awe-inspiringly striking. Structures are towering over you as you marvel at the landscape you're surrounded in. Camera angles shift as it emphasizes structure points to give a bit of an overview to the area you are situated in. To compare, in the original game you had to explore throughout the game world's wonderfully hand-drawn 2D environment. It was well designed and you can tell they were going for an urbanized art style with its presentation. In the sequel, Shibuya is now rendered in a sharp 3D cel-shaded environment and you get to explore different areas with its numerous shops and diners. Rich with vivid colors that complement the overall vibe, this rendition of Shibuya gives you a certain perspective to exploration and allows you to appreciate the design of each location. Though there are some minor issues when it came to exploration, particularly because of the fixed camera angle, such as camera perspectives changing so suddenly that you might get confused where to go, or the difficulty of going through an alleyway because the camera isn't showing where the passageway actually is. You'll get used to these as you play through the game and might not affect your experience very much, but it is still something to take note of. Clearly the game is aiming for a slick and stylish approach when it comes to its presentation. I feel like the developers wanted to replicate the style that existed from the original game and apply it in a more modernized and aestheticized way, making the same drawn environments, structures, and streets come to life. Furthermore, I have to talk about the music. The OST of this game has to be one of the best selections I've ever heard this year. I promise you that the music in this game will be the ones that you'll surely be buying once it's available. Listen while you do about your business, when you exercise, or when you just want to do some shit. Point is, the OST is incredible. Each song just gets you revved up, making your traversal and excursions between objectives much more invigorating. The overall OST is varied from J-pop songs to alternative rock to metal, including remixed versions of the music from the original game. Some songs even help you get hyped for the upcoming battle, making you want to just pop up some normal encounters here and there, just to listen to the glorious magnificence of this OST.
We need to weather this storm.
No sweat for Fred! How's that? Let's keep it going! Say goodnight! Yes, got it! We're on a roll! Hey, try not to lose focus. You're done for!
Another great thing is that you can buy the soundtrack from select shops within the game and access them in the menu. You may even select one of the songs as your main song when browsing the menu, giving you the chance to just vibe with the music while you're equipping your skills and looking through your collections, or if you just feel like doing nothing. Some may say that the music isn't as up to par as the Final Fantasy games, Kingdom Hearts games, or even the Nier games, but it doesn't really have to be. The music presents itself with its own sense of style, and it serves as one of the key identifiable factors of what makes the game stand out from others. Never before has the series showcased Shibuya in such a way that would further enhance your immersion within its universe. In my opinion, the developers were able to encapsulate and realize the world of Neo in a way that would complement both its storytelling and world building. There's a lot to be said about the game's story, so we'll come back to that later. One of the biggest challenges the developers had to face was to implement a control scheme that was appropriate to a controller, all the while retaining what made the combat of the first game such a great excuse to break the screen of your handheld consoles for fun. For the DS and Switch, the touchpad was mainly used to perform different skills and was essentially the main way of dispatching your enemies. With the transition to modern consoles, the touchscreen was no longer an option, so instead, skills are now assigned to specific buttons, and depending on which type you are using, each skill will have a different prompt and different effect on enemies. Skills come from pins which are equipped to each character. Initially, you play as Rindo, Fret, Nagi, and Sho Minamimoto as part of the team The Wicked Twisters. Each character can only equip one, and as I mentioned before, is assigned to a specific button. The variety of skills you can use in battle is just insane. You have different types of attacks ranging from projectiles, melee, bombs, and many more. And you have different kinds of the aforementioned types ranging from patrol rounds, beams, chains, telekinesis, sabers, and honestly, a lot more. Each skill or pin will undergo a cooldown once their charges are all used up, and their durations also vary. This allows plenty of room for you to experiment which pins complement each other, because once you discover the set that works for you, you will definitely feel like some avatar.
Alright, let's do this!
And you would want to know which set works for you so that you can chain beat drop combos more seamlessly and effectively. Beat drop combos are a sequence of beat drops followed by attacks that you unleash onto an enemy. Depending on the pin, these beat drops have different conditions that when executed successfully will signify you to attack to perform a combo, which in turn will fill up your groove meter. Once filled up, the groove meter allows you to use a mashup, which is a magnified version of the element or skill that you use in your most recent combo. You can also change the current mashup by performing a beat drop combo to suit whatever strategy you have in mind for your enemies. As there are various elements of which a lot of skills are attributed to, you will find yourself wanting to see the mashup that a certain element offers just to discover its effects and how you can utilize it to suit you. What's great about this system is that you can execute all of your skills simultaneously, all at once, or wait for the right moment for maximum effect. You can unleash a barrage of garbage at your enemy while firing a massive beam for increased damage. Meanwhile, you can also charge your patrol rounds and fire them at the proper moment to perform beat drop combos continuously and eventually perform a mashup to finish off the enemy. This gameplay design gives you incentive to explore your options in battle and come up with numerous ways on how to maintain and sustain your advantage over your enemies, since they will become more and more difficult as you progress through the story, making you want to adjust your strategy accordingly. Sure, you can use all of your skills at once, but at the cost of being vulnerable and possibly increasing the risk of being defeated in battle. Or you can use your skills effectively and efficiently to dispatch your enemies much more easily. Though despite my praises, there are minor issues with the combat. When you target an enemy, the camera focuses on the direction where it is. Normally, it isn't a cause for concern, but when you are faced with very fast enemies such as wolves, it can get very annoying. There could be times when the camera would act like a dog trying to chase its tail, since enemies can circle around you, and especially when they are fast, you can get dizzy with the camera. Later on in the game, as you recruit more characters in your team, you will be able to use even more skills than before. As you adjust your strategies to work with what you have, this also means that there will be times when visual clutter will occur, where all the effects of the skills you are using crowd the screen, making it a tad difficult to know what is even going on. Also, you cannot remap the button prompt for a specific pin. To explain, I'm sure that every player has their own style or method of executing moves, abilities, or combos in fighting games, first-person shooters, and etc. The thing is, remapping the controls in these types of games allow the player to transform their playstyle at their own discretion. They could perform certain moves with more ease compared to the default control scheme. In Neo, you cannot do that. Instead, you are stuck with a designated button prompt for certain pins and you'll just have to adjust. If you find a pin that's complementary with your current skill makeup, but the button prompt for it is inconvenient for you, then tough luck, you'll just have to find another pin. Now a lot of people might say this isn't much of an issue, so why even mention it? To be honest, it wasn't an issue for me either. But the thing is, there might be people who would find it more difficult in utilizing the default control scheme compared to the average gamer. So I just hope that if Square Enix plans to make another game in the series, to add more accessibility options compared to what we currently have. Personally, these minor issues didn't really affect my enjoyment of the game, except when it crashes. I don't know if it was the current build of the game at the time, or because there were just a lot happening on the screen at once, but my game crashed 3 times in my entire playthrough. Fortunately, Neo has a very considerate autosave function that despite these crashes, it didn't really make me lose any form of progress. The game also has a difficulty system where you can change the difficulty if you want to have a more casual experience or if you want your skills to be tested. But another function of changing the difficulty is determining what kind of item you will be looting from enemies. You can only get certain items from them depending on which you choose between the 4 difficulty modes. In addition, you also have the option to raise or lower your level. This only affects the amount of health your team has and the drop rate multiplier, which increases your chance of getting items from your enemies. Stats can also be increased a la Yakuza style, where you can eat in diners but also raises your fullness meter. This meter in turn can be reduced by partaking in battles, and once it has gone down completely, rinse and repeat. Stats can also be affected by the clothing you wear. Each item has different stat points and effects that can change the way you approach battles. Clothes have different brands which can be bought in numerous shops in Shibuya. Each shop has a meter or rating that you can increase to score hidden items within the store once it reaches certain levels. Side quests expand the world that Neo is set in, with some involving the main characters helping other people by intervening using their powers, while other types of side quests involve taking quizzes or Reapers just giving out enemies for you to defeat. Completing these side quests award you with friendship points and additional contacts which you can spend and view respectively on the social network. The social network is just a glorified skill tree and does not have any social mechanics to it unlike the name suggests. But you can use the aforementioned friendship points to unlock different quality of life abilities and features, certain items, and even additional choices for your favorite diners. Though the side quests are a tad uninspired, the ones involving people from Shibuya give an interesting enough perspective as to how they are going about with their day. It provides an outlook into the inner struggles of normal individuals from their perspective and makes the game world feel a bit more alive. Overall, the battle system is quite addictive and surprisingly varied. Despite its minor issues, the number of other mechanics at play in service to the core gameplay loop just makes the game so satisfying and fun to play upon hours on end. While some may think that such a drastic change from the original made it less innovative to some extent, I believe that they were able to implement an excellent way to blend accessibility to the combat while enhancing its levels of depth as well. Now, the story starts when Rindo and Fred unknowingly join the Reaper's game, a death game where they are pitted against other players and must score to the top to survive. Whoever's team is placed last will face erasure. Along the way, they meet Sho Minamoto and Nagi as they form a team called the Wicked Twisters, and try to survive and go back to their normal lives. If you're familiar with films like Battle Royale or anime like Future Diary or games like Danganronpa, then you'll feel right at home with the story. If not, then think of it as a game of musical chairs. If you get to sit when the music stops, you get to continue through the game. If not, then instead of just being out of the game, any trace that you ever lived will be gone, so yeah, the stakes are high. If you're a newcomer, you might think that this being a sequel would affect your overall experience and would make it less enjoyable. While it is true that people who played the original would have a better understanding of the story from this game, that is not to say that new players won't have any enjoyment either. In fact, you can just jump right in without any knowledge of the first game whatsoever and still end up satisfied with the overall story. I understand that the amount of lore and backstory may be daunting to some and would dismiss experiencing the game entirely due to such perceived notion. But certain aspects of the story, especially parts that would otherwise have any references to the original game, are contextualized well enough to keep new players from being alienated. For the most part, the returning characters were presented as how they were in the original. And when I say that, it's not that they're the same people as they were before, but rather it felt like they have lived 3 years of their life since the last time we saw them and are more experienced and are more dependable than before. Furthermore, they do not overburden you with exposition of events from the first game, but rather weaves them well enough to relevant conversations and are more focused on the present matter at hand. However, I felt that some returning characters were underutilized, that they served more as fan service than actual variables that could affect the story. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing bad with a bit of fan service here and there, but certain characters, while their presence makes sense, don't do enough to make their moments be of any significance, which is a bit disappointing because new players won't be able to appreciate those characters as much, and that these characters might have had fans coming from the original game, hoping to see more of them in action than what we got. On the other hand, the new characters, including our main protagonists Rindo, Fred, and Nagi, are welcome additions to the table. Rindo is a logical but cynical teenager who seems indecisive when given a choice. Fred is a carefree and kind-hearted individual who looks out for his friends, and Nagi is an eccentric but highly empathetic college student who is wildly enthusiastic over a game called Elegant Strategy. Together, they use their skills and respective abilities to navigate their way through the Reaper's game as they strive to avoid being in last place. What I've noticed is that the characters, especially the new ones, take a backseat and the game places the plot on the forefront, meaning story events just take place one after the other, and you aren't really given any chance to explore more about the characters you are with in any way. The thing is, because of the nature of the Reaper's game and how the narrative is structured, it's quite improbable to have some downtime for us to learn more about and explore our main characters. One of the reasons why I think the first game was able to showcase such compelling characters is because of how their development is focused and succinctly presented. The whole game spans 3 weeks, and throughout those weeks, the only constant is the main character Neku. For each week, he has a new partner that the story could focus on, and for each day, we know more about his partner and how they influence him and his actions, which in turn explores Neku as a character. In Neo, because of the larger cast that is maintained throughout the game, it's unavoidable that some characters are going to be more focused on than others, and that the quality of writing for each will vary. That's not to say that the new characters lack depth though. The game gradually takes its time and eventually weaves information about the characters as you progress far enough through the story. Each has their own personal moments of vulnerability, providing context behind their motivations and behaviors, giving layers to their personality. 95% of the time, the story will be told in a style akin to a comic book or a manga, as they are presented through character portraits and different panels. I have to say, I really love this style, not only because I'm a weeb, but rather because this stylistic design choice allows this game to showcase its narrative in a way not many others can do well. The portraits are also very expressive and complementary to the decent voice acting during certain cutscenes.
Nani? なんすか? お前ら新チームを作りやがったか。ベテランチームの世話になってるよ。
はーい、おめでとう。
死神の
Shoka。 そうそう、翔歌ちゃん。
ターゲットが倒されたから今日は終了。最下位は免れてるかな。
Are these Ruin Bringers really all that tough?
Let's just say they're an aggregate function of a higher order. And since you're not interested in getting on their level, I'm done here.
No, wait! Come on, Rin dude. Let's go look into this new player. Gonna scan the city!
Very well. Then feast your eyes upon my arsenal. I've got this exclusive pin only obtainable at ES Live, along with all 25
Then there's
soundtrack
pins
from the
pins.
Blu-ray box sets, the comic adaptation, and this not-for-sale pin I won in a contest.
And here are a few I made myself.
After collecting them for so long, I just had to create my own.
It's just a bunch of merch! Oh, wow! I've never seen so many pins in one place. You're so amazing, Nagi.
However, the pacing of each chapter was really off for me. This might be just my personal preference, but I really couldn't stand the Reapers that blocked off other areas. To explain, within each chapter, there are Reapers scattered all over different parts of Shibuya, guarding the entrances going to the other areas, essentially keeping you from finishing story objectives and progressing through the game. To pass through them, you need to perform tasks that they will request of you. This may range from killing enemies to equipping certain clothing to manipulating the thoughts of other people using the main character's respective powers. At first, it didn't really bother me, but as I did more of these, I just found the tasks to be monotonous, tedious, and just boring. I felt like I was wasting my time with these guarding Reapers since they didn't add much to the narrative. There are some exceptions, of course, with interesting spins of the same routine, but variations of these tasks are just few and far between, that it made me dread doing them. Granted, this was also present in the original game, but even then I really disliked it because of the same reasons. Fortunately, they can be quickly finished, but with the sheer amount of these Reapers scattered throughout the chapters, I just wish they implemented another system in place to pace out these segments better, so that trips in between story beats flow more seamlessly and fluidly. But despite the issues I've mentioned, I really enjoyed and found a sense of delight in the story. Being able to see the stark contrast on how the wicked twisters initially treated each other compared to how they were able to develop as characters by the end. The story is engaging and intriguing as the narrative explores the themes of community, friendship, and the sense of belonging as it showcases how our main protagonists are affected by the struggles they are facing and the lengths they would go through to overcome such adversity. There's no doubt that despite the shortcomings present in the story, old and new players alike will be able to appreciate and enjoy the journey that Neo will take you. Neo The World Ends With You is a great entry to the series. While there are some issues with the game, the overall narrative is an enjoyable enough ride to satiate my appetite for any World Ends With You content. The gameplay is intuitive, engaging, and fantastic. The music slaps harder than your mother, and the modern look of its overall visual design is astounding. The game serves as a good entry point and would no doubt make newcomers want to try the first game and discover why it was such a revered and iconic piece of art of its time. If you were able to make it at the end of the video, then I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. If you already played the game, comment down below and tell me what you think. If you liked the video, then click like, otherwise click the dislike button, and subscribe to my channel if you want more content like this, and click the bell icon to be notified the next time I upload any videos. Until next time, bye gamers!